The sound of skin striking skin echoed across Riverside Park like a gunshot, freezing every conversation within a 50-foot radius. 8-year-old Marcus Williams staggered backward, his chocolate birthday cake tumbling to the ground in a mess of frosting and crushed dreams. His small hand flew to his reddening cheek, as tears welled in his dark eyes. Not from the physical pain, but from the shock that a complete stranger had just struck him for the simple act of enjoying his dessert. Karen Whitmore stood over the child. Her manicured finger still pointed accusingly at his round face. Her blonde hair, perfectly styled despite the afternoon breeze, framed features twisted with righteous indignation. The designer handbag clutched in her left hand probably cost more than most families spent on groceries in a month, and her crisp white tennis outfit suggested she viewed the public park as her personal domain. "Fat kids like you ruin this park for everyone else," she shrieked, her voice carrying across the playground where other children had stopped their games to stare. Running around, making noise, dropping food everywhere like little pigs. This is a respectable neighborhood, not some inner-city feeding ground. Marcus's lower lip trembled as he looked down at his ruined cake, the chocolate chunks now mixing with dirt and fallen leaves. He had been so excited about his birthday treat, saved from his party the day before, and carefully carried in a small container by his grandmother, who sat on a nearby bench, momentarily stunned by the sudden violence. "Ma'am, that's my grandson," Eleanor Williams called out, rising shakily to her feet. At 73, she had seen plenty of cruelty in her lifetime, but nothing quite prepared her for watching a grown woman assault her beloved grandchild over birthday cake. "You had no right to hit him. He wasn't bothering anyone." Karen whirled around, her eyes blazing with the fervor of someone convinced of their own moral superiority. "Your grandson is a menace. Look at him, stuffing his face, making a mess. Children like this grow up to be burdens on society. Someone needs to teach him some discipline before it's too late." The park had grown eerily quiet, except for Marcus's soft sniffling and the distant sound of traffic on the main road. Other parents were beginning to gather, drawn by the commotion, their faces ranging from concern to outraged as they processed what they were witnessing. Sarah Chen, a young mother pushing her toddler on the nearby swings, had already pulled out her phone and was recording everything with shaking hands. "You just assaulted a child," Sarah said loudly, making sure her phone captured Karen's face clearly. "In front of dozens of witnesses. I hope you're proud of yourself." Karen's expression flickered with momentary uncertainty before hardening again. "I defended this community against antisocial behavior. That boy needs to learn that actions have consequences. His family clearly hasn't taught him proper respect for public spaces." Marcus finally found his voice, small and wavering, but filled with the simple honesty that only children possess. "I was just eating my birthday cake. My mom made it special for me because I got good grades. I wasn't hurting anybody." The mention of his mother seemed to snap something inside Eleanor. She moved protectively in front of her grandson, her aged hands clenched into fists despite her arthritis. "You will not speak to him again. What you did was assault, pure and simple. We're calling the police." "The police?" Karen laughed, a harsh sound devoid of any humor. "Do you know who I am? I've lived in this district for 15 years. I organize the charity galas. I serve on the Homeowners Association board. The police aren't going to arrest me for correcting a badly behaved child. If anything, they'll thank me for maintaining order." What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known as she stood there radiating entitlement and misplaced authority, was that Marcus Williams was no ordinary 8-year-old from no ordinary family. His mother, Dr. Angela Williams, was currently in an emergency budget meeting 3 blocks away at City Hall, wearing her official title as district chief with the weight of responsibility that came with overseeing law enforcement, public safety, and community welfare for over 200,000 residents. Dr. Williams had worked 16-hour days for the past decade, climbing from beat cop to detective to lieutenant to her current position through sheer determination and unwavering commitment to justice. She had missed countless school plays and soccer games to build a career that would provide Marcus with opportunities she had never had, growing up in the same impoverished neighborhood where her mother still lived. The irony was devastating. While Karen ranted about proper discipline and social responsibility, she was berating the child of a woman who had dedicated her entire adult life to protecting and serving the very community Karen claimed to represent. Marcus carried his mother's sense of fairness and compassion, traits that made him help younger children on the playground and share his snacks with classmates who forgot their lunch money. Sarah's video was already uploading to social media as more parents gathered around the scene. Tom Rodriguez, a local teacher who recognized Marcus from school district events, stepped forward with his own phone recording. "Ma'am, I'm documenting this incident for the authorities. You've just committed assault on a minor in full view of multiple witnesses. I strongly suggest you leave immediately and seek legal counsel." Karen's confidence wavered slightly as she noticed the growing crowd of onlookers, many now holding phones pointed in her direction. The modern reality of instant documentation and viral accountability was beginning to penetrate her bubble of self-righteousness. "You people are overreacting. I barely touched him." Sometimes children need firm correction from responsible adults when their own families fail them. "You slapped him hard enough to knock him backward," Eleanor said fiercely, her arm around Marcus, who was still clutching his reddened cheek. "You're a grown woman who attacked a child eating birthday cake. There's no justification for what you did, and there will be consequences." The word consequences seemed to trigger something primal in Karen's psychology. Throughout her privileged life, consequences had been things that happened to other people, the poor, the disadvantaged, those without connections or influence. She had navigated 42 years believing that her social status and community involvement provided immunity from accountability. "Consequences," she repeated, her voice rising to a pitch that made several nearby children start crying. "I'll show you consequences. I'll have Child Protective Services investigate this family for raising an undisciplined, overweight child who disturbs public spaces. I'll file complaints with the school district about their failure to educate students about appropriate public behavior. This isn't over." What Karen failed to notice was that Officer Patricia Martinez had arrived at the park in response to multiple 911 calls. Officer Martinez had been patrolling the area when the calls started flooding in, describing an adult assaulting a child. She parked her cruiser and approached the gathering crowd with the measured steps of someone accustomed to diffusing volatile situations. "What's the situation here?" Officer Martinez asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone trained to command respect without raising volume. She immediately assessed the scene: one adult woman clearly agitated, one crying child with visible marks on his face, multiple witnesses with phones recording, and the unmistakable tension that follows violence. Sarah stepped forward first, her phone still recording. "Officer, this woman struck this little boy across the face because he was eating birthday cake. We have multiple witnesses and video evidence. The child was doing nothing wrong, just enjoying his dessert when she attacked him and started screaming about fat kids ruining the park." Officer Martinez turned her attention to Karen, noting the expensive clothing and the defiant posture of someone unaccustomed to being questioned by authority. "Ma'am, is this accurate? Did you strike this child?" Karen drew herself up to her full height, which was still several inches shorter than the officer's imposing frame. "I provided necessary correction to a child whose behavior was disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of this public space. Sometimes firm action is required when parents fail to teach appropriate social conduct." "So you admit to striking him?" Officer Martinez asked, pulling out her notebook. The distinction was important confession, made the case straightforward, regardless of witness testimony. I administered appropriate discipline, Karen said, apparently unable to recognize the legal trap she was walking into. This community has standards, and someone needs to maintain them when families refuse to accept responsibility for their children's behavior. Officer Martinez looked down at Marcus, whose tears had mostly stopped, but whose cheek still bore the clear outline of an adult hand. In her 10 years of police work, she had seen plenty of child abuse cases, and this one was particularly clear-cut. An adult stranger had struck a child hard enough to leave visible marks. In public, over the simple act of eating food. Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault on a minor, Officer Martinez said, reaching for her handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The words hit Karen like a physical blow. Her face went white, then red, then white again as the reality of the situation penetrated her consciousness. You can't arrest me. I'm Karen Whitmore. I serve on the Homeowners Association Board. I organize charity events. I know Judge Henderson personally. Ma'am, please turn around and place your hands behind your back, Officer Martinez repeated calmly. She had heard variations of this speech from dozens of entitled individuals who believed their social connections placed them above the law. They were always wrong. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Karen's composure finally cracked completely. This is harassment. I'm being arrested for trying to maintain community standards. You'll all regret this when the real authorities find out what happened here. I have influence in this city that you people can't even imagine. The crowd watched in satisfaction as Karen was led to the police cruiser, her designer handbag now hanging awkwardly from her cuffed wrists. Several people applauded openly, while others continued recording to ensure the complete incident was documented. Marcus watched with wide eyes, processing the adult concept that actions truly do have consequences, even for people who seem powerful. Officer Martinez took detailed statements from multiple witnesses while waiting for Child Protective Services to arrive as standard protocol required. She also collected contact information from Sarah and Tom, whose video evidence would be crucial for prosecution. The case seemed remarkably clear-cut: multiple witnesses, video evidence, visible injuries, and a confession from the perpetrator. What Officer Martinez didn't yet realize was that she was about to make the most important arrest of her career. When she ran Karen's information through the system back at the station, she would discover the suspect's history of complaints against minorities and children. Previous incidents that had been dismissed due to her community connections. More importantly, she would learn that the victim was District Chief Williams's son. The news would travel up the chain of command within hours, reaching Captain Morrison, who would immediately understand the political implications. Not only had a prominent community figure committed a clear crime, but she had targeted the child of the city's highest-ranking law enforcement official. The symbolism was devastating: a wealthy white woman attacking a black child whose mother had dedicated her life to protecting the community. Dr. Angela Williams was reviewing budget allocations for community outreach programs when her phone rang. Eleanor's voice was shaking as she explained what had happened, the words tumbling out in a rush of anger and grandmother's protective fury. Angela's hand tightened on the phone as she listened, her professional composure warring with maternal rage. "Is Marcus hurt? Is he okay?" she asked, already grabbing her keys and heading for the door. The budget meeting would have to continue without her. Nothing was more important than her son's safety and well-being. "He's scared more than hurt, but there's a clear handprint on his cheek," Eleanor replied. "The police arrested the woman. Multiple people recorded everything. Angela. She said terrible things about our boy. called him names that no child should ever hear. Dr. Williams drove to the park with lights and sirens, her official vehicle cutting through traffic as her mind raced through the implications. As district chief, she would need to recuse herself from any official involvement in the case to avoid conflicts of interest. But as Marcus's mother, she was prepared to move heaven and earth to ensure justice was served. She arrived to find Marcus sitting on a bench with Eleanor, an ice pack pressed to his cheek, while Officer Martinez finished collecting witness statements. The sight of her son's injured face ignited something primal in her chest. The same protective instinct that had driven her to excel in law enforcement, to make the world safer for children like him. "Mommy!" Marcus ran to her, burying his face against her uniform. "A mean lady hit me because I was eating my birthday cake. She said fat kids ruin the park. But I wasn't being bad. I promise." Dr. Williams held her son tightly, her professional training warring with maternal instinct. She had prosecuted dozens of child abuse cases, but experiencing it personally brought a new dimension of rage and helplessness. "You weren't being bad, sweetheart. What happened to you was wrong, and the person who did it will face consequences." Officer Martinez recognized Dr. Williams immediately and approached with visible apprehension. "Ma'am, I want to assure you that we're handling this incident with full seriousness. The perpetrator has been arrested and charged with assault on a minor. We have multiple witnesses and video evidence." "Thank you, Officer Martinez." Dr. Williams replied formally. "I'll need to recuse myself from any official involvement due to the personal nature, but I trust our department to handle this appropriately through proper channels." What neither of them yet realized was that Sarah's video was already spreading across social media with explosive velocity. The footage showed everything in stark clarity: Karen's unprovoked attack, her racist and body-shaming language, Marcus's innocent confusion, and the gathering crowd of outraged witnesses. The video had been shared over 10,000 times within the first hour, accompanied by outraged commentary from viewers across the country. The hashtag #YasherJusticeForMarcus began trending nationally as the video reached prominent social media accounts dedicated to exposing public incidents of racism and child abuse. The visual evidence was so clear and the woman's words so inflammatory that the video required no additional context to generate massive public outrage. By evening, local news stations had picked up the story. Channel 7's evening newscast led with exclusive interview footage of Eleanor describing the attack, while Channel 4 had obtained enhanced video, clearly showing the impact of Karen's hand against Marcus's face. The story was presenting itself as a perfect storm of contemporary social issues: child abuse, body shaming, racism, and entitled behavior by privileged individuals. Karen Whitmore sat in her holding cell, still unable to fully process the situation. She had been fingerprinted, photographed, and processed like a common criminal. Her expensive clothing now wrinkled and her perfect hair disheveled. The reality of her situation was beginning to penetrate her consciousness. But she remained convinced that her connections would resolve everything once the proper authorities understood what had really happened. She was wrong on multiple levels. Judge Henderson, whom she had mentioned by name, was actually a family friend of Dr. Williams and had followed her career with professional admiration. The Homeowners Association had already received dozens of calls demanding Karen's removal from the board. The charity organizations she claimed to represent were frantically distancing themselves from her actions. Most devastating of all, her husband Richard was watching the viral video at his law office downtown, his face growing pale as he recognized his wife's voice, screaming about fat kids and inner-city feeding grounds. As a partner in a prestigious firm that represented several major corporations, he understood immediately that his wife's actions could destroy both their social standing and his professional reputation. The next morning brought no relief. The story had reached national news outlets, with CNN and Fox News both running segments about the incident. The video footage was being dissected by legal experts, child psychology specialists, and social commentators who used Karen's behavior as a jumping-off point for broader discussions about privilege, racism, and child welfare. Dr. Williams had spent the night comforting Marcus, who was struggling to understand why a stranger had hurt him for enjoying his birthday cake. She explained concepts of fairness and justice in terms an 8-year-old could grasp, while privately planning her response to what was clearly becoming a major public incident. As district chief, she had always advocated for community programs addressing childhood obesity through positive encouragement and healthy activities, rather than shame and punishment. Karen's attack on Marcus provided a perfect opportunity to launch a broader initiative against body shaming and bullying. Turning her son's traumatic experience into a catalyst for positive social change, she called a press conference for that afternoon, understanding that her unique position as both victim's mother and law enforcement leader gave her a powerful platform for addressing the issues raised by the incident. The press conference would need to balance personal outrage with professional responsibility, maternal protection with public service. The press conference was held at City Hall, with reporters from every major outlet in attendance. Dr. Williams stood at the podium in full uniform, Marcus beside her holding her hand with quiet dignity that belied his 8 years. The visual was powerful, a professional black woman in position of authority, defending her child against unprovoked attack by a privileged white woman. Yesterday, my son Marcus was assaulted by a stranger in Riverside Park for the simple act of eating birthday cake, she began, her voice steady, despite the emotional weight of the words. The incident was recorded by multiple witnesses and shows a clear case of unprovoked assault on a minor, accompanied by body-shaming language and discriminatory attitudes that have no place in our community. She continued, "As district chief, I see this incident as representative of broader issues we must address. Children should feel safe in our public spaces, regardless of their size, race, or family background. No child should be attacked for enjoying food, and no adult should feel entitled to physically discipline someone else's child based on their personal prejudices." The questions from reporters were pointed but respectful, recognizing both her professional position and personal investment in the case. When asked about seeking revenge or special treatment, Dr. Williams was clear. "I want exactly what any parent would want: justice through proper legal channels and assurance that our community protects its most vulnerable members." Meanwhile, Karen's world was collapsing around her. Her husband had filed for emergency separation to protect his law practice from association with her actions. The Homeowners Association had voted unanimously to remove her from the board. Every charity organization she had claimed to represent issued public statements condemning her behavior and clarifying that she held no official positions with their groups. Most importantly, the district attorney's office was building a comprehensive case against her. The video evidence was crystal clear. The witnesses were credible and numerous, and Karen's own confession to Officer Martinez had been properly recorded and Mirandized. Legal experts interviewed by news outlets agreed that the case was essentially prosecutorial gold clear evidence. Sympathetic victim, unsympathetic defendant. The public response had grown beyond anyone's expectations. A GoFundMe account established for Marcus's college fund had raised over $50,000 from strangers moved by his story. Letters of support arrived at Dr. Williams' office from across the country, many from other parents who had experienced similar incidents with their children. Karen's first court appearance drew massive media attention. She had hired expensive legal counsel who attempted to minimize the incident as a momentary lapse in judgment and requested lenient treatment based on her previous community involvement. The strategy backfired spectacularly when the prosecutor presented enhanced video clearly showing the force of the blow and the racist language Karen had used. Judge Patricia Stevens, presiding over the arraignment, set bail at $50,000, unusually high for simple assault, but justified by Karen's flight risk and the high-profile nature of the case. Karen's family was forced to liquidate investments to post bond, adding financial stress to their already overwhelming legal and social problems. The case became a lightning rod for broader social discussions about privilege, accountability, and the treatment of children in public spaces. Child advocacy groups used Karen's behavior as an example of adult bullying that traumatizes young people and contributes to long-term psychological problems, including eating disorders and social anxiety. Dr. Williams leveraged the attention to launch a comprehensive anti-bullying initiative focused on protecting children in public spaces. The program included public education campaigns, training for park staff and security personnel, and counseling resources for families who experienced similar incidents. Marcus became an unofficial spokesperson for the initiative, his dignity and articulation making him a powerful advocate for other children. 6 months later, Karen Whitmore stood before Judge Stevens for sentencing. She had been convicted on all charges after a 3-day trial that featured overwhelming evidence and unsympathetic testimony from her own character witnesses. Her defense attorney's attempts to portray her as a misunderstood community advocate fell flat when prosecutors presented evidence of her previous complaints against minority families and children. The sentence was comprehensive: 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service working with children and families, mandatory anger management counseling, and a substantial fine paid directly to a fund supporting anti-bullying programs. Judge Stevens made clear that the sentence reflected not just the assault itself, but Karen's pattern of discriminatory behavior and complete lack of remorse throughout the legal process. Ms. Whitmore, Judge Stevens said, "Your actions represented everything wrong with adult behavior toward children. You took it upon yourself to physically discipline a child who was not yours, based on prejudices about his appearance and assumptions about his family. Your behavior was criminal, but more importantly, it was deeply harmful to a young person who deserved protection, not attack." Karen stood silently as the sentence was read, her expensive legal team having prepared her for the inevitable outcome. The viral video, witness testimony, and her own recorded confession had made conviction certain. Her only hope had been for minimal sentencing, which the judge's harsh words made clear would not be forthcoming. The community service requirement would force Karen to confront the humanity of the families she had dismissed as unworthy of public spaces. Working directly with children and parents would hopefully provide education that her privileged upbringing had failed to deliver. The anger management counseling was designed to address the underlying prejudices that had motivated her attack on Marcus. Marcus Williams, now 9 years old, had grown from the experience with remarkable resilience. The support from his community and the broader public had taught him that most people were good and would stand up for children who were being hurt. His mother's response had shown him that justice was possible, even when powerful people did wrong things. The incident had transformed from personal trauma into community healing. Riverside Park now featured new playground equipment, purchased with donations generated by Marcus's story. The anti-bullying initiative had expanded to schools throughout the district, teaching children and adults about respectful behavior in shared spaces. Dr. Williams reflected on the journey during the dedication ceremony for the new playground equipment. What had begun as the worst day of her son's young life had become a catalyst for positive change that would protect countless other children. Karen's moment of cruelty had accidentally unleashed a wave of community solidarity and institutional reform. Marcus cut the ribbon on the new playground with characteristic dignity, his mother beside him as dozens of community members applauded. The celebration marked not just new equipment, but a community's commitment to protecting its most vulnerable members from the kind of unprovoked attack that had started everything. As children rushed to try the new swings and slides, Marcus found himself surrounded by friends who had supported him throughout the difficult months. The incident had taught him early lessons about injustice and resilience, but also about the power of good people to make positive change when bad things happen. The story would live on in social media archives and legal precedents, a reminder that actions have consequences regardless of social status or community connections. Karen Whitmore's moment of entitled rage had backfired spectacularly, creating exactly the kind of accountability she had believed herself immune to experiencing. Justice had been served, loudly and publicly, transforming one child's trauma into a community's triumph and proving that no one is above the law when it comes to protecting society's most precious members.